News out of Colorado, which is interesting. A lot of people, of course, are afraid about the idea of cannabis being legalized there. It happened in 2012 during a vote. It was a referendum. It took them a little while to kind of implement things, and in early 2013, early 2014, the beginning of this year, January, Colorado became the first state to actually have legal cannabis, wherein you could go to a store, a cannabis dispensary of some sort, and you, as an adult, can purchase cannabis legally, walk out, and be totally fine. Now, there may still be a law in Denver, for instance, about smoking it in public. I believe that's still the case, but at the very least, it's legal to purchase it and transport it to your own home or to a piece of private property wherein you can consume it legally, which is very exciting. It's very good news. It's great news because, it ends a good chunk of the war on drugs in Colorado, which is, I think, an exciting thing. It means that fewer people will be put in jail cells and have their lives ruined for being arrested for cannabis. And if you don't think that happens, you just don't know many people in the, kind of the counterculture, the drug culture. But there's a lot of fear that comes around with this. And, we've seen the headlines about a small child finds a marijuana cookie and eats the cookie and gets sick, or somebody got a brownie from somewhere and they didn't realize there was marijuana or cannabis baked into the brownie and they ate too much and they got sick. So these stories do exist. There's no reason to doubt their veracity, I don't think. But that's one of the kind of the scares.
Sure, but I mean, let's think about those alcoholic beverages that are bright colors out there.
Yeah, sure. Very pretty, very attractive to children.
I'm sure that you're not hearing.
Sweet.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, they are sweet and they taste just fine.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure we never hear the stories about the kid that drank the Bartles and James.
Great point. And puked.
And puked or may have
blacked out.
Alcohol kills people.
That's true as well. And how often does alcohol causing problems make the front page of the newspaper? Not very often.
It's just poison control at that point.
Right, unless it's a drastic accident which, caused tragic loss of life. Odds are good that somebody getting too wasted on alcohol and being stupid, doing something they'll regret, or perhaps losing control of their physical faculties, that's so common, it's not news. Right? I mean, right? It's Saturday night. We're on the air across the United States. Odds are good a fair amount of our audience has some kind of an alcoholic beverage in their hand. And as the night goes on, that amount, the percentage of that happening, it likely increases. So, yeah, that's a great point, Mark. So, yeah, okay, drugs, cannabis is legal in Colorado, so inevitably that means that there may be more of it in cookie or a brownie form, some sort of edible form. They've got the cannabis candy now as well.
But what they're not saying, what doesn't ever hit the news, because these pot brownie things or pot candy bars or whatever, they hit the news and they hit it pretty hard. Mm-hmm. What you don't hear is out of the Washington Post, since marijuana legalization, highway fatalities in Colorado are a near historic low.
Now, is that a correlative sort of thing, or is it just one of those interesting figures? There's no way to really say that, right?
No, I don't know. I mean,
it's interesting.
When you can go to California, you can say that youth crime is down since marijuana's near legalization in California, and you can say that automobile accidents are a near historic low in Colorado. I mean, yeah, how do you find out how an automobile accident was caused?
Well, I mean, you can certainly, if the person's alive, they could be tested for substances.
Well, but this is a lack of accidents.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How do you figure out what a lack of accidents is caused by?
Right. Good point.
Well, the stoners are staying home, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Or maybe more. Well, it'd be interesting to look at alcohol sales, too. What about alcohol sales? Have alcohol sales gone up, down, or stayed relatively the same after cannabis has been legalized? Because you could theorize that, maybe somebody, if they can purchase cannabis legally, would be more likely to purchase cannabis than perhaps drink alcohol. I mean, I have known people
I can tell you that alcohol manufacturers have always historically been against marijuana legalization.
They have lobbied, actually. They've paid alcohol manufacturers, I believe, are some of the members of the so-called Partnership for a Drug-Free America, which is, of course, an ironic thing because alcohol's the most powerful, probably tied with heroin for the most powerful and destructive drug out there. and it's mostly legal. So here's the news, actually. This is pretty interesting news from Reason.com, their hit and run blog. New survey data from Colorado indicate that marijuana legalization so far has not led to an increase in pot smoking by teenagers, as prohibitionists warned that it would. In the 2013 Healthy Kids Colorado survey, 37% of high school students reported that they had ever tried marijuana, down from 39% in 2011. The percentage who reported using marijuana in the previous month also declined from 22% in 2011 to 20% in 2013. Now, is it really fair to look at 2013 numbers here in this study? I guess it was it legal in 2013? I don't think it was. I think it was was it legal to possess it after the voters passed this in 2012? In 2013, did it become legal to just kind of have pot? Well, and then in 2014, it became legal to buy the pot?
I think they just kind of ramped down arrests. I mean, it's got to be very, demoralizing for a police officer to when the vote's, been had but has not been implemented.
The percentage who reported using marijuana in the previous month also went down from 22% to 20%. The State Department Public Health and Environment, which oversees the survey, says these decreases are not statistically significant, but they are part of a general downward trend in Colorado that has continued despite the legalization of medical marijuana in 2001, the commercialization of medical marijuana in 2009, and the legalization of recreational use, along with home cultivation and sharing among adults at the end of 2012. The earlier numbers come from the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, to which Colorado contributes data from its own survey. Their survey is conducted every other year from the CDC, and Colorado has not always participated. Let's see. Still, this doesn't look like what you would expect to see if relaxing restrictions on marijuana led to more underage consumption. In fact, the downward trend during this period is clearer in Colorado than in the country as a whole. So if you go back all the way to 1999, there's a marijuana use by American teenagers, and I believe this is of all America. It's not... Yeah, okay, so I'm looking at marijuana use by Colorado teenagers. In 1997, it was 46% had said that they had used marijuana. Medical marijuana was legalized in 2001, and it began going on a downward trend. It actually has been going on a downward trend, but as marijuana was legalized for medicinal purposes, as it was commercialized for medicinal purposes, meaning that it could then be available through dispensaries, through medical marijuana dispensaries, this whole time, Colorado has had a downward trend in teenagers using marijuana. So,
well, this is the one thing that is baffling to people who are sort of against these marijuana legalization things. And I frankly, it baffles me too. I really don't understand. But
why? It says this doesn't confuse me. You take away the forbidden fruit aspect, it doesn't become as sexy. It doesn't have the sizzle.
I smoked cigarettes in high school.
And you weren't allowed to.
Well, I guess that they were legal. Marijuana's not legal for
But it wasn't legal for you to smoke cigarettes.
Is it legal for high school students to smoke marijuana in Colorado?
No, I guess it wouldn't
not.
Be. No, I guess
so.
It wouldn't be.
I don't understand. But the fact is that you cannot. It is undeniable when you look at Portugal, when you look at Amsterdam, you look at these places that have decriminalized drugs, specifically marijuana, that you see a decrease in use. That it's really difficult to look at the U.S. when all these drugs were legal fewer than 100 years ago. It's difficult to look at those numbers, but the evidence is that the percentage of the population that uses them is either stayed the same or gone up.
The toll-free number...
The war on drugs has not diminished use.
...is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. It almost seems like the best way to reduce drug use is to legalize them.
Those are the numbers.
That's what happened in Amsterdam, and now it's happening in Colorado, and it can happen in your state if you actually do this and you legalize pot and other drugs too. 855-450-FREE. We were talking about cannabis legalization out in Colorado and how apparently the statistics are showing that teenagers' use of cannabis, despite the fact that Colorado in 2001 legalized medical marijuana and then in 2009 commercialized medical marijuana, meaning you could go to dispensaries and acquire it easily. And then, of course, in 2014, or actually I guess it voted in 2012 to legalize cannabis, which was implemented earlier this year. Year after year after year, teenagers using cannabis, the numbers are dropping. And statistically, over time, quite a bit, actually. So the old argument from the prohibitionists, the people who want to keep the status quo, who want to keep arresting pot smokers, their argument for continuing prohibition, one of the strongest sounding arguments, at least, is that the claim that, oh, well, if you legalize it, then the teenagers are just going to start using even more marijuana than before. But there's no evidence for that whatsoever. Not in Amsterdam, where they've been experimenting with marijuana decriminalization for what, 2 decades now? It seems like it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
So it hasn't happened there. And now, of course, you could always claim then, well, that's apples and oranges. You can't compare Amsterdam with the United States. United States teenagers are much worse, and they're more likely to smoke pot. So, you can make that up. You can say apples and oranges, not fair to compare. Well, now it's no more apples and oranges. Now it's Colorado, right here in the United States. The numbers are pretty firm and pretty clear. And teenage use does not go up. In point of fact, it's actually going down in Colorado.
Well, we can also see that crime has diminished in California, correlative to marijuana being basically decriminalized there for, at the very least, medical purposes. But it's very easy to get a medical card in California. We can see here in this story that in Colorado, that since marijuana legalizations, highway fatalities are a near historic low. So I don't know if people are driving more carefully or just not getting on the road. They're staying in their living room and having a trip right there.
Well, the evidence shows that stoned drivers are safe, as safe as, if not safer than, regular drivers. They're more cautious on the road. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. In the last hour, we were talking about cannabis and how in Colorado, surprise, surprise, turns out teenagers are smoking less cannabis than, well, ever, at least in the last 10 years. They're looking at the numbers last 15 years. The statistics have been going downward. There's a downward trend, even though medical marijuana passed in 2001. Medical marijuana was more instituted commercially in 2009. And then, of course, in 2012, the voters voted to legalize. All of that did not increase teenage use. In point of fact, teenage use continued to decline year after year after year. It's fascinating stuff. It flies right in the face of what all the prohibitionists are saying, or many of the prohibitionists say, as to why we need to continue marijuana prohibition. It's for the teenagers. Well, it turns out, it looks like if you legalize pot, that's the best way to get teenagers to stop trying it.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.